Welcome to Lamplight, a podcast with insightful messages and conversations by real people pursuing hope and change. Today, Pam Morse is here to talk about how we can actually make time work for us, not against us. She'll help us see the difference between just ticking off the minutes and really seizing those special moments when God is moving. When we tune into those moments, amazing things can happen in our lives and the lives of those around us. So join me as we listen to Pam's talk.
So, it's about time. Let's start with time. These things right now are courtesy of the Mathematical Association of America, so if you have problems with this, take it up with them. Okay. All right. Start with this. Who knows what time it is? Excellent. Right now, you see, the problem is you've already been trained, right? Most people will look at their watches or they'll look at their phones, right? How many people actually are still wearing a watch? Yeah, put that hand up, that watch hand. How many are just now using a phone? Right, great, it happens. That's how we tend to tell time in the measuring of time thing. And I love that you said what time zone, this is awesome. How did the ancients measure time? By the sun, right. By the sun. And as far as we know, who were the first people to keep time? Yeah, you heard it. The Egyptians. Of course, they came up with all the sun-related things, right? Mathematical Association of America, remember, if you don't like these answers, take it up with them. Egyptians, 1500 BC. What they did is they used the basic unit of daylight. Okay? Daylight. From sunrise to sunset, and they divided it into 12 equal parts. Now, why did they decide that 12 equal parts, sunrise and then 12 equal parts on the sunset, would be 24? Who knows? Why not base 10? Well, curious minds wanted to know, including me. Why did they use base 12? Why not base 10? Like the Canadians. Why not? I know, it puzzles me to this day. Well, if you go to acuriousastronomer.com, and that's for Steve Hubbard. Curious astronomer out of Cornell, there's Gary Feck. I tell you, it's all in here. Question answer, this is what it says. Somebody asked that question, so why base 12? Anybody want to take a guess? Somebody might know. You never know who knows stuff here. What? I love it. No. Go like this. If you go like this, or we go like this, if you still have all 8 of your fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fingers, not thumbs, fingers, how many joints do you have? 12, unless you've had some removed. It says this, quote, "It appears that the Egyptians are responsible for the 24-hour day. The Egyptians were fond of counting in base 12. This is thought to be because they counted finger joints instead of fingers. Each of your fingers has 3 joints, so if you count by pointing to finger joints with your thumb, you can count to 12 on each hand. This might seem arbitrary, but it's actually just as strange as counting in base 10 simply because you have 10 digits." Wow. Time. Weird stuff. What's the problem with 12 periods, which we call hours? What's the problem with 12 periods of daylight as a way to count? It changes. It changes. So, for the Egyptians, the hour was not a constant length of time, but it was 1/12 of the daylight. So it would vary with the seasons. Do you see the problem here? We're getting into time measurement here. And so the hunt was on to find ways to measure time independently from the sun. Something that was more dependable, more constant. What are some of the things that you think they came up with, our ancestors, to measure time apart from the sun? What'd you say? Hourglass, yeah, sand glasses. Dripping water, yes. Beating heart. I didn't read that one, but maybe unless you exercise, and then which could be a problem, I don't know. These are some of the ones there. Sand glasses, water clocks, candles, believe it or not, were invented to measure time independently from the sun. And it was the beginning of introducing, if you will, the metaphor of time as something that flows and flows continuously. The accuracy was never very great, and things often needed to be reset. So it was really hard that, who did that song? Does anyone really know what time it is? Does anybody really care? Thank you. Yes. Honestly, they would have been singing that way back in the day. For most of history, it's hard for us to imagine, for most of history, ordinary people did not have a way to access measuring time or measuring time devices. Benedictine monks actually are credited in the 15th century as the people that really started to take the measurement of time really seriously and consistently. And eventually it got more sophisticated, and now we have these things called we have atomic clocks. Ever heard of atomic clocks? Which just sounds bad because that means something's degrading, but I don't get it. But there are atomic clocks, and that's how we kind of have the authority of measuring of time. But here's a mind blower, and then I'll move on, because some people really love this stuff. Who really likes learning about stuff? Yeah, Steve, Gary. Okay, so here's a mind blower. Did you know that gravity affects time? Sarah's nodding her head. Would you care to share it? No. Okay, you're just encouraging me. Okay, so hear this. This is crazy stuff. The earth is it's God's creation is so cool. Okay, here we go. So on Earth, can you agree with me? Gravity can vary for a number of reasons, including your altitude, right? So if you're Mount Everest, the effect of the gravity that you feel is different than if you're at sea level, okay? Right? So that means that if you put a bunch of synchronized atomic clocks at various altitudes, eventually those clocks will fall out of sync. So a clock at the top of Mount Everest and one at sea level, over time, now granted we're talking like 4.5 billion years or so, but anyway, it will have diverged by a day and a half. You say that's no big deal, but what it says is time is not the constant that we think it is. And we've been immersed in these past couple of days about pondering time. What is time? When is time? Like, what does time matter? Right? It's about time. And so I offered to you in prayer groups the simplest way I can think of to measure time, which is past, present, and future. And thank you for your spirit of adventure. Today was present. Tomorrow, it's the future. And remember the present, right? Yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery, but today is a gift. That's why they call it the present. Thank you, Kung Fu Panda. And what's so cool about past, present, and future is God is equally present in all three, right? At the same time, now it's getting weirder. So believe it or not, we can pray to God at any time, about any time, period. Think about it. Because if God is outside of time, then it's all the same time to God. Time is not linear for God. And if you are not confused yet, you are not paying attention. But Glenn Clark got it. That little bit you read today. And what did he say that was so cool? It's the part I was lingering. Probably everybody had a little part that they liked to linger on. What was the part I loved right here? It said, but God in his great love and kindness knew that the infinite here and the everlasting now were too big for me to see all at once, and therefore he is unfolding them to me in a perfect sequence and order that has been arranged for me in heaven. Oh, thank you, Jesus, because this is too much. I just need to know when the kids need to get on the bus, right? Let's talk about practical time. So we know time is not just a unit of measurement, and yet we are so bound by it. And we're bound by it in a way that the ancients weren't bound by it. And our lives are ruled by this thing called a clock. But time is slippery. And even as a unit of measure, we still experience it subjectively. It's that one? Oh, see, it sounds like here. Oh, and by the way, did you happen to notice, at least for me in my imagination, did you notice the chandeliers, what the shape of the white is? It's an hourglass. And by the way, I've done enough semiotics, that's not by chance. Just saying, probably not. Probably not. They knew what they were doing. So anyway, but we experience time subjectively. So think about a time that it took you to go to a joyous event. And the time it took for you to travel there, maybe for somebody's wedding or somebody's graduation, and the anticipatory, the time that it took to get there compared to the time that it took to come home. They felt different, didn't they? And then how about when you went to a funeral of someone you loved? The time it took to get there and the time it took to come home. They were not the same, I bet, for you. And what they were, longer or shorter for each person, would probably vary, but that sense of going and coming, they're not the same. There's an emotional variable to time that physicists cannot account for. So think for a second. Think of some of the idioms and axioms. I don't know the difference. Adam, Maddock, the wordsmith could tell me. I don't know. It's okay. But we could brainstorm for a minute some of the idioms and axioms about time. What are some things we say about time? What does it say? How do kids spell time? That is not one I knew. All right. Time flies is one. What else? Time's ticking away. Time is money. Come on, you got more. Time to go. Time is on your side. Time out. What'd you say? Time keeps on slipping, slipping, slipping into the future. And those under 40 are saying, I don't know Steve Miller Band, but it's a cool sound that we got going. Okay, sorry. Squirrels. There we go. Don't waste time. What is it? There you go. Da-da. We have to give them their turn. Sorry, just kidding. Do you got one, Stephen? You got one, Tim? You want to add one in there? No, it's okay. Time stood still. Save time, spend time, don't waste time, make time, kill time. Too much time. Isn't it crazy how when you start, you can't stop? We have so many. It's crazy. Enjoy that. Enjoy that. So, speaking of time, yeah, I know, there's never enough time. But I realize some people have no idea who I am or what I do or why I'm here. So I'm going to do that pretty quickly. Oh, and I promised myself I could take this off for this few minutes. Pam Morse, Carabasset Valley, doesn't fit on any form, by the way, way too long. Maine. So I have the privilege of serving God along with my husband as pastors of Sugarloaf Christian Ministry, which is located at Sugarloaf Ski Resort in the northwest corner of Maine. You said Maine has a northwest corner? Well, yes, sort of. It's the western mountains of Maine. Those of you who know your geography, I'm about, let's see. In less than an hour, I can be in Quebec, Canada, Quebec province. What? It's like South Canada. And in about an hour and a bit, I can be in New Hampshire. So if that helps you. Our little town is about 700 residents. They are never all there at the same time, and a lot of them say they live there for tax purposes. So it's smaller than that. We do not have a school. We do not have a post office. Not bitter about that at all. K through 8 in our town is probably about 40 kids. It was 40 kids when my kids were little. It's still probably about 40 kids now. I live 2 miles off the paved road. That's how I know you're a redneck if your instructions begin. Turn off the paved road. 700 residents, 10,000 pillows. You say, what's a pillow? You know what a pillow is. You know what a pillow is. I live in a resort, so that means 10,000 places for people to sleep. It's a way to count size of a resort. So there were a small group of people in a huge resort, and our calling is to minister to those people as they come and go. There are a few around who stay. I cannot play that games with you. How big is your church? How many people go? Like how many members? I can't play any of that. Because we are a ministry, we are a mission, we are a place, a way station, an oasis in the wilderness, even in the midst of affluence. It is, I love it. I love it. I had to go far enough away so that nobody knew that maybe I shouldn't be doing this. And I found a group that is so terribly unchurched, it's never occurred to them to question my legitimacy. So I have been there for 32 years. So I needed to give you a picture of that because of the story I want to tell you. So here it is. So sometimes time gets distorted, right? Doesn't that? Sometimes time just gets in that warpy thing and it just gets distorted. So here I am. Maybe even gets suspended sometimes. So here I am. A number of years ago, we're going to say maybe 14. My husband always says 5 years ago, but come on, really? It's probably 14 years ago. It was a sunny September morning. And I am traveling south on what we call the S-curves. It follows the river, and you go down, 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 and it's very curvy. And it's September, and all of a sudden, a moose with a big old rack, you know what a rack is, right? Comes bounding up from the Caribbean River and on the road and across right in front of me. Morning traffic's coming north, I'm going south, moose is in between, big moose in September. What are moose doing? They are rutting. You don't normally see them at this time of year, and if you do, they are nuts. I had time for 3 things. This is what I remember. I had time for 3 things. I put my foot on the brake, I kept the steering wheel straight, and I closed my eyes. Because I knew I was going to hit that moose straight on. Now, the problem with moose is they're really tall. It's not like hitting a deer. So their legs are really long, and so it went into the windshield and up over the roof of the minivan and off the back end. And that time distortion that some of you may have felt at various times in your life, oh my gosh, I can still remember what that was like. It was like a slow motion replay on ESPN, and there's nothing you can do. So anyway, so hold that thought. So that's kind of where I live. So time gets distorted, right? The measurement of time, it's very subjective. I want you to go away from this thinking, oh my gosh, time is not what I thought it was. And it's about time. Let's take a look at God's story. All right, Bill Woodson, you did a fabulous job yesterday morning, talking about Esther. No, but you talked about Esther yesterday, right? You did a great job talking about Esther yesterday. Don't mess with me. I know my time. No, I'm just kidding. And my time is almost up. All right, so I won't recap too much of Esther's story, but from the book of Esther, First Testament of the Bible, how the Feast of Purim came to be, I'm going to leave that to Steve. I'm not even going there. But it's very cool. And the star of the story is this young Jewish girl named Hadassah, who's been taken from her guardian Mordecai, forced to compete for the affection of the king, kind of like it's kind of like beauty pageant anyway. She won, and she's crowned Queen of Persia, renamed Esther, which means star. I think that's pretty cool. But the great Persian king does not know she is a Jew. Dun, dun, dun. Meanwhile, Haman, the king's evil second in command, whose ancestors were ancient enemies of God's people, convinced the king to exterminate the Jews in his kingdom. History repeats. And the king was so gullible that he made a solemn proclamation and set a date. And then I love what Bill said. Esther's weird uncle, Mordecai, is stunned and reaches out to Esther to do something, to beg the king for mercy, to spare their people. And of course, this puts Esther in quite a bind. She's in quite a spot, or as we might say, quite a spot of trouble. Because not only will she have to reveal her lineage to the king, who she really is. We could talk about that all day, we're not gonna. She's gonna have to reveal who she really is. And the other problem is nobody goes to the king without being summoned, and nobody speaks first, unless the king invites them to do so. So she knows that in doing this risk is huge. This isn't like, hey, could you just go to your sugar daddy king and ask him a favor, please? No, this is putting her life on the line. And she knows it, Mordecai knows it. And that's where we get these wonderful phrases, Esther 4, starting at 13. I'm going to read it from the Message because I really like the way it goes. It says this. So Mordecai sent this reply to Esther. Don't think for a moment that because you're in the palace, you will escape when all other Jews are killed. If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place. But you and your relatives will die. Who knows? If perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this. Context matters. Whoa. Wow. Just sit with that for a second. So I just want to talk briefly, because some of you guys, a lot of folks are already kind of familiar with this and more familiar with this than I may be. The Bible does speak about different kinds of time. There is that what we call chronos time, which is clock time. We've been talking about that. We're really familiar with that. But then there's that other time. What's that big fancy $10 word? Kairos time. Ever heard of that? Kairos time. Circadian, that's good. And Kairos time, so chronos time is, think chronology, right? Chronological, that's your clock time. And Kairos time is that right time. The right time. It's not a unit of measurement, but it's an auspicious moment. Ecclesiastes is all about Kairos moments of time. Those are not chronological. Those are not chronos times. Those are not times on a clock. Those are Kairos moments. And to know when it is a time for peace, to know when it is a time to dance, to know when it is a time to mourn. Those are Kairos moments. In our story, I think Mordecai is referring to that kind of Kairos moment. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this? That's a Kairos moment, an auspicious moment. And it is interesting to know, those of you who like this kind of stuff, that God, the name God, the word God, it's not specifically mentioned directly in the book of Esther, which is curious for a book of the Bible. But God clearly plays a role, though sometimes hidden, in that drama. None of us would question that God is amazingly involved in that story. What about your own life? Even when God isn't mentioned, God is clearly present, right? Of course. One of the things, and I have to say and reiterate, I remember, I have to take a quick moment, CFO moment. I remember speaking here at Finger Lakes with John Hobbs, whom we lost to this measurement of time this winter. And I loved speaking with John, and I loved listening to John. And for those of you who never had that opportunity, I am so sorry. Because for me, and it looks like for some of you, he was pivotal in my life and in my development as a follower of Jesus. Because I love the way he called forth in the image of God with everybody he saw. And it was just amazing. He saw that God was always present, though sometimes hidden. And he saw it as his kind of calling to call that forth. I heard Bill say something about like the Walmart stories. I'll let you tell those. Hysterical. But I remember, just say briefly, I'll tell you this. Years ago, we spoke here, and the people go and walk the Glen. Some people hike the Glen. Did you start at the bottom or the top? At the top. Smart. You must have gotten info from the locals. See, a lot of people start at the bottom and they have to hike up and then they have to turn around and hike down. And I remember Debbie and her husband dropping us at the top and we just walked down. And John and I were walking down the Glen on a beautiful day and all these sweaty, hot people are walking up. And John is just loving on each one and calling forth from each one. I don't do a very good John Hobbs imitation. Maybe somebody else does. Yeah. You look beautiful, baby. Hello, baby. I'm like, how can he get away with this? And he goes, I'm an old white guy, bald, and I'm with you. I can do this. I'm like, okay. But he would look people in the eye, and he would truly, it wasn't a gimmick. I mean, he just loved the Jesus, the image of God in them. He saw it. And he was able, because he loved, to call that forth. I'm not John Hobbs. But I do love encouraging. And one of the things that I love doing is I will say to people, wow, when I see people doing something that's really cool, teaching a kid to read, donating to the food closet, helping somebody with their car, whatever it is, that's a positive, wonderful thing to do for somebody else, I'll say, I think God really loves what you're doing. And they'll be like, what? You have to remember, I live in Maine. That's a forward statement. And I would say, do you know that when you volunteer on the ski slope here so that the kids can have a chance to learn how to ski, that's ministry? And they'd be like, what? I say, I think God is smiling with delight when you invest yourself in the lives of young people. That's how I do it. You have another way. But as Reggie McNeil said in his book, Thy Kingdom Come, for me, the kingdom is so central in how I live and move. And he has a great little simplistic but helpful definition because it translates into our culture. Kingdom. What is the kingdom of God? It's life the way God intended it to be. That's it. Anyway. And God is working through Esther, a Jew in hiding, to rise to that Kairos moment, that critical moment to protect and to save her people. And she does it, and it works, and it's amazing, and what a gift. So much more there I can't. But you got the general picture. I just want to offer this to you. I believe that God is always speaking. I learned that in CFO. Always reaching out to get our attention. And I would describe some of those as these Kairos moments, when we hear and respond to God's kingdom as it's revealed on earth. Or I'm going to say it more simply, and you can write this down because I got it down to like just a few words. Ready? Took a while, but I got it. My husband would be proud. Sometimes we are in the right place at the right time with the right heart, and God's kingdom bursts forth. In the right place at the right time with the right heart. That's it. And we could talk more, and if we have more time, I'd have you talk about like what moments you've experienced. I can't. Maybe you can do it. I can't. Don't have time. I'm going to even skip my next story. Bam. Okay, it's out. It was about the Enduro World Cup, but it's okay. I'm going to skip it. Right place, right time, right heart. CFO is about prayer. I offer that to you as a transformative prayer in your life. What would it be like if each morning, say even each morning for the next 40 days, pick a biblical number. If every morning you said, Lord, I want to be in the right place in the right time with the right heart, what's going to happen? God stuff. What is your first prayer in the morning? Usually it's something like, Lord, get me out of bed. Not a bad first try. It's a necessary one. And it could get you out of bed and give you purpose and focus. But I'm going to ask you, try this one even before you get out of bed, if that's, really your next thing. God, put me in the right place at the right time with the right heart. The challenge about this prayer is it is not self-focused, it is other-focused. It's not about getting our needs met, but meeting the needs of others. Queen Esther knew she had to act, and not just for herself, although it did benefit her, but for others. And these Kairos moments are not passive moments. They are active moments in the sense that we need to be in a place to respond. So put me in the right place at the right time with the right heart. Which one can we affect the most? The right heart, right? The first two really belong to God. Put me in the right place at the right time. And you might be directed. Go here, go there, right? But it's the right heart that is our job. And that's why I wanted us in our prayer group times to really talk about heart talk. Heart. It's the heart, folks. Some people say, well, what if I get it wrong? What if I don't hear God's voice? I'm like, just trust it, trust it. You've been in CFO. Some will work, some won't work. Just relax. Be authentic. What's the worst thing that can happen? You love somebody. It's okay. The right place, the right time, with the right heart. So here we are, in this Kairos moment, in CFO. What is God calling you into right now? Kairos moments are often uncomfortable, and they feel chaotic because we've taken a risk. We've extended ourselves. We've given up control of the situation, right? Let go and let God have his marvelous way, or whatever it is, wonderful way. But you gotta. Glenn Cock called it the art of falling. They're uncomfortable. And so that sense that we were feeling today, it's uncomfortable. It feels chaotic. But what is God calling CFO into right now? We are a living, breathing organism. We are alive together in the Holy Spirit. I said it earlier this week, right? E. Stanley Jones says what? We have not fully surrendered until we go to our own funeral. We are talking about, and I'm so sorry, I don't want to get into preaching. I'm so sorry. But we're talking about resurrection, not resuscitation. Is it okay if I go a little bit longer with that? Resurrection is terrifying. Ask the disciples. What? You're alive? No, can't be. You were dead. I mean, if you don't think they were terrified, go back and read. They didn't know what to do. It's resurrection. It's not resuscitation. I say this in love. I think you know by now how much I love CFO. It is my ground. It is where I would not be who I am today if not for CFO. But please take seriously, O people of God, what needs to die so that new life can begin. Personally, or in your camp, or in CFO at large, what needs to die so that resurrection can occur? As my dear Tony Campolo would say, it feels like Friday, but Sunday's coming. It's okay. Because we're in it together. Yeah, with one another, but really with the God of all time and all space, who lives in the eternal now, right, for whom the past, present, and future is all the same thing, yada, 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 yada. Oh my gosh, it's mind-blowing. That's the God that's got all this. I would just like to invite you to join me in a prayer experience, it's not very long, with one of my most favorite prayers written by an amazing person named Thomas Merton. My Lord God, I have no idea where I'm going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end. Nor do I really know myself, and the fact that I think I am following your will does not mean that I am actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope I have that desire in all that I am doing. And I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. And therefore I will trust you always, though I may seem to be lost and in the shadow of death. I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never leave me to face my perils alone. This is a good word. Amen.
Thanks, Pam. You've given us a very wise saying that we would pray. Put me in the right place at the right time with the right heart. Pam reminded us that even though Kairos moments can feel a bit chaotic, there are amazing chances for God's kingdom to shine through. Let's prepare our hearts so that we are ready to seize those moments, to understand the times we're living in, and to step into God's kingdom every chance we get. Thank you for listening to this episode of Lamplight, a podcast from CFO North America. It is our mission to lead people in the adventurous pursuit of a transformed life in Jesus. If you know someone who might enjoy today's episode, please share it with them. And if you'd like to learn more about CFO North America, please visit our website, cfonorthamerica.org.